Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. I've been getting asked a lot of questions lately about how I homeschool multiple children. So today, that's actually what I'm going to talk to you about. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of pointers today, and then later on this week I'm going to talk more about how we implement these what I call homeschool hacks into our own school routine. Now, I want you to keep in mind that when I think of multiple children or large families, coming from a mom of 11, I tend to think of big families, like 6, 7, 8 more kids. So a lot of times when I'm talking about the little tricks that I'm going to tell you today, I am referring to bigger families like that. And a lot of these hacks can definitely be used when you have, 3 kids, 4 kids, and they can be tweaked. So just keep in mind that if it sounds a little bit like, whoa, I don't need to do that. That's why, because I'm really coming at this from someone who this year is homeschooling 9 kids. So I'm really used to doing things this way. So before I even start, I just want to remind you that way back before compulsory schooling started, kids did learn when they weren't learning at home or out on the farm or in the fields. They did learn in a one-room schoolhouse. And these children were all children of all ages were kept together, and they learned together. So this isn't something different. This actually is I would say older than the method that our traditional schools nowadays keep in place of, having all of the 4th graders together and all the 5th graders and all the 6th graders. That really was not developed until the start of compulsory schooling, and it was modeled after the Prussian style of education. So I want you to keep that in mind, because the whole grade level thing was more of a social engineering experiment than it was education. So just keep that in mind. It is not anything out of the ordinary to teach different levels at the same time. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about that really, really, really helps me, and this is the biggest thing I can tell you, is if you do have a larger family, you really do need to group your kids. Now, since I have a unit study that covers, say, kindergarten through 8th grade, so I did used to try to do all of my kids in that grade level together, but because I had so many, this year I have 7 kids in that grade level. It was just too chaotic for me. It was too hard. I would always have kids wanting help at the exact same time, and I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off all the time. So what I actually started doing was grouping my kids. The groups are usually are about 3, sometimes 4 kids, and they're kids who are either around the same age or are at least on the same level. So what I have this year are the littles, which is usually from kindergarten to 3rd grade. It's usually kindergarten to 2nd grade, I'm sorry. Last year, though, I did have my son, who was classified as 3rd grade last year. He stayed with the littles just because I felt he was not developmentally ready to go up to the middles yet. So we do have that. And then the middles is generally around 3rd or 4th to 8th grade. And then the high schoolers. And you can really group your kids however you feel most comfortable doing it, but that's just an idea, because when you have your kids in groups of smaller amounts of kids, it really is much more manageable when they need help, or when you're doing a project that maybe needs some more details or needs more of mom. It really helps to have a smaller amount of kids. So yeah, this is one of those hacks that is definitely for like a big family. Now the next thing that I want to tell you, the next hack is consolidate your subjects as much as possible. And I know that most of us have gone to a traditional school of some sort, whether it's public school or private school. So we're all accustomed to learning all of the subjects separately with textbooks for each of them, and each child who, in whatever grade they're in, they're doing their own stuff. And it doesn't have to be that way. You really need to consolidate your subjects if you want to keep things, if you want to be less frazzled as the homeschooling parent. You really do need to do that. So now it can be harder for some subjects to do that. Definitely the hardest ones to do that for are reading and math. So what I've done with my kids is my kids will do reading or some form of language arts each separately, and then they will do math each on their own. I shouldn't say on their own, because I do sit with my kids and I do math with them, and with my younger kids I do reading and phonics with them. And so that, yes, they do that separately, but I do not do long lessons. I do shorter lessons, and I find that I keep their attention better, so they're actually able to learn more, because if I tried to squeeze too much in, they would get overwhelmed and they would probably end up learning less. So yeah, so that's okay to do separately. But really, things like history and science and art and music and all of those other subjects, they're so easily combined. And a great way to do that is with unit studies. I love unit studies. If you've watched my videos, you know that I love CONUS. I think it's amazing. And I've done so many other unit studies that are just great. And coming from a mom who did start out homeschooling, doing a separate textbook for every single subject, for every single kid, I'm telling you, it is so much better when you do consolidate. Another way that you could do that is you could do a lot of read alouds with your kids. I do that also. Read aloud time we have every day, and it's really my favorite time of our homeschool day. And again, that's something else that you really can do all together with your kids. And even especially if you have your kids narrate, you discuss things with them. It's a great family time, but it's also a great way for learning. And if you incorporate notebooking at all with that, that is also a great way to just keep all of your kids learning together. Now, I mentioned earlier that we keep our lessons shorter, and that is another hack for teaching multiple children. And it's not just for teaching multiple children. This hack is great for an only child. It's great for kids who have ADHD. I honestly can't think of, okay, if you have a child prodigy who really, really enjoys doing 2 hours of math a day, okay, then maybe this wouldn't be for them. But what I found is that shorter lessons tend to sink more deeply into your children because they don't get completely overworked. They don't start to get stressed out because they just keep thinking, oh my gosh, how many problems do I have to do of this? And I found that even adults tend to get stressed out when we have way too much to do. So as younger children whose brains are still developing, I really think that it works best to just keep their lessons depending on their age. Now, my younger kids, my littles, their lessons are usually 10 to 15 minutes long. Sometimes their phonics, lately they've been breezing through their phonics. Their phonics lessons have been taking like 5 minutes a day lately because they're just so good at them now. But that right there shows that they're learning. That shows that these short lessons are doing something. Now, for my middles, I usually spend for math, I'd say probably about 20 minutes for math I've been doing with my middles. Sometimes 15 minutes, but it's usually around the 20-minute mark. And then for my high schoolers, which I'll talk about them later, the only thing I do with my high schoolers is math. That's the only thing that they need me for, unless I have to show them how to do something else. But anyway, their math lessons at least, are usually between 20 and 30 minutes long. Sometimes 45, but it doesn't happen very often. But again, short lessons, it's so important. Just for your kids. I was going to say, when you have a lot of kids, but it's not just that. It's really good for your kids, learning wise. Another great thing to remember when you're homeschooling multiple children is that as parents, we don't often give self or interest-led learning enough credit. And I think that's because, again, we're coming off the traditional school model and we're used to teachers giving us what we're supposed to learn. So then we expect that we're supposed to give our kids everything that they're supposed to learn. But the thing is that kids are fantastic natural learners, and they are curious, and they're always trying to find out about the world. And so what you need to remember is that the things that they're doing in everyday life, they are learning through that. Especially young children, play-based learning is the best learning that you can give them. So if your kids are playing house, that's showing them, family life. It's showing them social studies skills. If they're outside digging for bugs, that's science. And I'm not one who really likes to break things up into subjects like that. Like, even when I teach my own kids, I don't say, okay, we have to do history today, so we're going to do this. I don't do that. I just do whatever comes next. I don't classify subjects because they all get covered naturally. So what you really need to remember is that sometimes it's okay to just do the 3 R's. Actually, that is all that I do with my littles at this point in time, is the 3 R's, which I'll get into more later on this week. But you need to remember that just because your kids are only doing, reading, writing, and arithmetic for the day, it doesn't mean that's all they learned. Did your kids play outside? Did they play with Legos? Did they put any puzzles together, color a picture? Were they watching maybe a documentary on TV? Were they talking with a neighbor who maybe comes from a different area? There are so many ways that you can put natural learning into your lives, and it's not even an additional pressure on you at all because it happens so naturally. So that is another great thing to remember when you're homeschooling multiple children, is that yes, you are the facilitator of your kids' learning, but if you give your kids lots of opportunities, keep your house filled with interesting things, take them to the library a lot, give them the chance to find what they really want to learn about, and if you have the sorts of things that they need lying around the house for them, they will do it. So if you maybe need to focus on the middles or the high schoolers for a little bit longer that day, it's okay if your littles are playing, because while they're playing, they are learning. So those are the main tips that I have for you today for homeschooling multiple children. Later on this week, I will get more into how we implement that into our family. Oh, and one more thing that I do want to remember before I forget is high schoolers. I know everybody's probably like, you didn't mention high schoolers. That's because usually high schoolers are more independent. So even with mine, now I'm taking this off of my kids. I don't know how your children are, but with mine, I know that they really don't need my help. Now, of course, I will write on the whiteboard what they need to do. And if they don't understand something, they'll say, hey, Mom, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. Then I'll explain it further. But for the most part, I really do only need to do math with them at this point in time, or if they need me to explain, say, a biology experiment that they're going to do. But at this age, kids are generally more independent. So that, I know a lot of people get intimidated by homeschooling high school, but what I found in our house at least is that that's probably the easiest age to homeschool. So anyway, later on this week, I will make another video that describes more how we implement this. I will talk more about what a typical day looks like in our house. In the meantime, if you have any questions, leave a comment. I'll be happy to get back to you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I would love it if you'd consider subscribing. Have a great day.